Liz Truss is set to become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. This means it will be Britain's fourth Conservative Party Prime Minister in 6 years and the third female PM in the country's history. Earlier today, she flew to Aberdeen in northeast Scotland, where she is currently meeting Queen Elizabeth, and there she will be formally asked to form a government. Soon after that, she will officially be the Prime Minister, and then she will be revealing her much-awaited cabinet. There are talks that for the first time there will be no white British men in the four great offices of the government in the British state. Kwasi Kwarteng is seen as one of Liz Truss's closest cabinet allies, and he's tipped to become Chancellor, that's the British Finance Minister. Suella Braverman might be appointed as Home Secretary, with responsibility for police and immigration. And James Cleverly could be assigned the role of Foreign Minister to represent Britain overseas. Reports also suggest a long-time friend of Liz Truss, Therese Coffey, is expected to become Health Secretary and also possibly the Deputy Prime Minister. In the Ministry of Defence, Ben Wallace is set to be asked to stay on as Defence Secretary. Now, the losing contender in the race to become the next leader of the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, will not be offered a position in Liz Truss's cabinet. He had decided not to accept any ministerial positions, but he has extended his full support to incoming Prime Minister Liz Truss. Meanwhile, Priti Patel has decided to resign as British Home Secretary just hours after the Conservative Party leadership results were declared. Now, just after Liz Truss and her teams take over in number 10 Downing Street, well, it's going to be a tough few months with the cost of living, soaring energy bills, an energy crisis and possible a recession are some of the key topics that are going to be facing the new administration. Reports say that the incoming team already has a plan in the works and has promised to prioritise domestic issues facing the country. Experts say the road ahead is going to be tough, not only because the job at hand is difficult, but because the Conservative Party is divided. And a new poll shows that about 2/3 of the population have little confidence in Liz Truss. Well, for more on this now, let's go live to our correspondent Alex Isats. Alex, good to speak to you. We've seen Boris Johnson head to Balmoral, the Queen's Castle in northeast Scotland, where he is going to be formally resigning. And then after that, in quick succession, it's Liz Truss. So just take us through the order of events for today. Liz Truss meeting the Queen at the moment, and then perhaps we can expect her to see her back down in London.
What we do know is that Boris has actually left Balmoral now. He gave his resignation and the Queen accepted it. So he's now out of the property and Liz Truss is on her way. So she is now officially meeting the Queen while we talk. So she will be asked to officially appoint a cabinet. So that's what she will be doing. I'm sure she has those people in mind that you've already mentioned and a few more that we're no doubt here later during the day. Now, this has been all a bit delayed because there is really bad weather over Scotland. So this morning, Boris Johnson was meant to give his speech at 9, but he did it early. And then Liz Truss has been circling above Aberdeen Airport because of thunderstorms. But she has arrived and she's definitely with the Queen now, getting to speak about what the future may look like for the Queen's UK. And later on today, we are expecting her to come back to Downing Street and to give a speech at 4 o'clock. But because that weather was quite bad earlier, we're not sure exactly of the timings, but we will definitely be keeping an eye out. And what we will expect from Truss is for her to talk again about what she's going to deliver, whether she'll be delivering, or what else she will be talking about. But it is clear that it's going to be what she calls a 100-day policy blitz. We're going to be hearing about the energy crisis, what she's going to be doing about the cost of living. And that number that's been circling around, £100 billion, that may help towards freezing energy prices. We may get quite some clarification on what that exactly means for all of us here in the UK.
Alex Sizek there. Thank you very much for joining us. Alex, some insight into the order of events on what is a constitutionally very important day for the United Kingdom, with the outgoing Prime Minister speaking to the Queen, and then the incoming Prime Minister after that also visiting the British monarch. Now, let's get a bit more insights in this big day of events in the United Kingdom. Greg Swenson is joining us, a political analyst, and he is live in London. Greg, just listening to Boris Johnson this morning and looking ahead to listening to Liz Truss later this afternoon, what do you think some of the key differences are going to be between the outgoing Johnson administration and the incoming Truss administration?
It's a great question, and I think it's pretty clear at this point that the new prime minister is going to try to return the Conservative Party to conservative principles, supply side economics, low taxes, pro-growth. She's really emphasizing growth, whereas Prime Minister Johnson, even though he won as a conservative, he really governed as a liberal or as even a socialist, with tax increases and essentially hostility against the supply side, especially against the energy sector. So I think we can expect some real changes in the philosophy of the conservative government with Prime Minister Truss.
Yeah, she has certainly said that she wants to lay out her plan and she wants to deliver. We heard Alex saying that she will want to hit the ground running, and she certainly has a lot on her plate. What do you think some of the top topics are going to be on her agenda, and how will she be addressing them?
Yeah, look, first and foremost is the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis. And unfortunately, she doesn't have a lot of conservative, philosophically conservative answers to that problem, because the problem was really created by the government, and specifically the conservative government, with the ban on fracking in 2019 and the price caps, which came from Theresa May. So, those are self-inflicted wounds. But unfortunately, the government's going to have to solve for that. She's already announced that she will have the price caps. I mean, those are just essentially transfers from obligations on the consumer to obligations on the taxpayer. And the cost that Alex mentioned of potentially 100 billion, look at that in comparison to the whole scheme during the lockdown. The furlough scheme was 60 billion. So it's a massive cost, but unfortunately, whether it's done through price caps or other relief to gas providers or to consumers, it's going to have to be done because of what's happened with the cost of energy. But I think what's more important is the long term. And so far, at least the way she campaigned, the prime minister has really made an emphasis on supply side economics, deregulation for sure. She's going to lift the ban on fracking, and at least that she said she has. So she said she will. So, this is a return to conservative principles of tax cuts, of deregulation, and, immediately reversing Prime Minister Johnson's 2.5-point payroll tax increase and the corporate tax increase from 19 to 26%. So this is a return to Thatcherite principles, which the Conservative Party really hasn't heard much in the last few years. So, and I think that will be welcomed by traditional conservatives.
Well, Boris Johnson won a big majority as a Conservative candidate in the 2019 general election. And then, as you say, Greg, perhaps governed in a slightly more liberal way. Do you think then, with this return to Thatcherite principles, that has been a decision that Liz Truss has taken to shore up support with maybe just 2 years to run before a general election, to try to make a real change in governing style from the Johnson administration?
Yes, absolutely, Ross Kellen. I mean, she's made that commitment. I'm glad to see it. But and I think the other thing she pointed out was she'll never, she had some criticism about the lockdowns. I'm not sure she can take much credit for fighting it at the time, but she has made the commitment. And that was another really big mistake coming from Boris Johnson, was locking down like more left-leaning governments were around the world. So, I think most of those were mistakes that were, self-inflicted wounds on Boris Johnson's government, on top of the tax increases and the regulatory state. So yeah, I think with Prime Minister Truss committing to those conservative philosophies and also committing to never making the mistakes of lockdown again. And I think that's another reason why it was difficult for Rishi Sunak to win the election, because he was associated with both the tax increases and the lockdowns. Even though he was critical in the last few weeks of those lockdowns, it was too little too late. So I think it's a fresh start for Prime Minister Truss. I wish her luck. I saw a great line in The Spectator today from Kate Andrews that, her honeymoon starts today and ends today. She's got a lot of challenges ahead of her.
Yeah, she certainly does. Greg Swenson, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.
Greg Swenson there live here on WION.